Everything is possible in bucket one.
But that decision's scary because that either means getting back in the hard road or getting out and hit a different hard road where you need to figure out what the heck you're going to do. The worst waste of time is backwards agony.
Hi, I'm Karen Gilhooly, host of Make Minutes Matter podcast, and today I have an incredibly special guest, Ray Pendleton, one of the collaborators on my new book that will be coming out very shortly called The 3-Bucket Leader. And we're going to talk a little bit about the book today, but really more about the philosophies and actually how Ray and I both learned some things along the way. So welcome, Ray.
Thank you. We learned one or two things.
We did.
A little bit.
We did. So Ray lives in Northern California.
That's right.
And has come down here to join us for this podcast this afternoon. And I'm so thrilled that we'll have a chance to cover quite a bit of bases.
As much as we can.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right. So why don't we start by just talking about how we met?
Okay.
And I think this is an interesting story because my decision to write this book was actually the result of a challenge given to me by my husband to take all of the years of working with people and managing teams and the journey of self-discovery too, I guess, and try to organize that into something that someone else could absorb. That's a goal that I've had for a long time, but he really put it into context when I had a life-changing event that took place a few years ago. My parents passed. I made a decision to step away from my structured job. And it seemed like if not now, then when? And I knew I needed some help. And here's the reason why. So when my husband challenged me with this, I told him I could have the manuscript done in a week. And
Sorry.
when I am very determined, I can get things done in a short amount of time. And I do believe that if I had spectacularly and singularly focused on just that one thing, I probably could have done it in a week. But that's not the way life works. No. And enter Ray and the collaboration team at Write a Great, who really kept me on track with my message and bringing out some really important insights in the book. So my book was about trying to figure out how to make the most of your minutes, which is really what our podcast is about here. And in the process of working with me, Ray learned about my philosophy, which says that any minute that is not invested in what we'll call bucket one, which is the prime bucket, where everything is just so beautiful and luscious and energized.
You're just fully engaged.
Fully engaged.
Yeah.
If you're not there, it's just it's a waste. So tell me a little bit about your experience of working with me, Ray, and how the things that we were talking about resonated with you.
Oh yeah. Well, few bases to cover.
Yes.
I hadn't heard you told your husband that you could do it
yes,
in a week.
in a week. And he laughed. But in fact, we even bet $50,000. But right now, not only do I owe him the $50,000, but he put some interest on it too.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, we calculated on our team it takes about 400 to 500 hours to do a manuscript and a revision and a proper. So
minimally.
That's a few weeks if you're in bucket one the whole time and not sleeping and fully caffeinated. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of boxes to check.
Yes.
I remember my first call an encounter with you was on our Meet the Team call, and I remember just how much energy you brought to the call, and our team was really vibing with you, and you were talking about how you and your husband were going to go on this cross-Atlantic cruise.
Yes.
And I'm just not a cruise person. I'm sitting there going like, I just hope they live so we can do this book, because my only reference point of boats across the Atlantic is the Titanic.
Titanic, yes. I did have those fears, but they were quickly put aside when I finally got on the boat, which was nice.
So needless to say, it was a good trip for you guys. We got to start the book. I was working with you and two other members of our team, Andy and Corinne. And you noticed right off the bat, I was not fully engaged.
You weren't.
I wasn't.
You weren't.
Should we break down the buckets just so people
Yeah,
know what
maybe.
we're referring to
Yeah,
when we
so
say?
that's probably a great idea. So I'll do bucket 1.
Okay.
And then maybe you do bucket 2, and it'll come back to me for bucket 3.
Sounds
Okay,
good. I get
sound
the
good?
hard one.
Oh, you do get the hard one. So the philosophy is called the 3-bucket leader, and the way it works is that if you were to take your time in any given day and organize the minutes that you have and put them into one of those 3 buckets, what would it look like? So in bucket 1, which we've talked about briefly, bucket 1 is the engagement bucket. Bucket 1 is where you go when you are on fire. Everything is clicking, you're super psyched and absolutely focused on what you're doing. You're working with people, most likely, that are in a similar mindset as you.
Ideally.
Everybody is moving and grooving, and you feel like it's possible. I think that's one of the key differentiators about bucket 1 is the fact that it is the possible bucket. It's not the impossible bucket. It's the possible. Everything is possible in bucket 1. Now that doesn't mean that you don't get frustrated and upset and very emotional sometimes. Right. But it's always in the spirit of trying to get something done.
Yeah.
And then there's bucket 2.
What I love about bucket 1 is that it erases a lot of the ambiguity around
Yes.
what are other people on the team thinking.
Yes.
Because it's like, okay, there's ambiguity in what we're pursuing, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of risk. So it's like if I am asking a lot of questions about are we going to achieve the outcomes, the last thing I want to be asking questions about is do I have the full commitment and support of the people around me? So that's where it's important to not just be in bucket 1 yourself, but to know that everyone else around you is also in bucket 1, aligned with the same objectives. Bucket 2 is a little interesting.
What do we call it? The limbo bucket.
The limbo bucket. And I think what we ultimately determined is that it's okay to be in limbo as long as you're there on purpose with a plan to get out of it.
That's right. You can't live your life in bucket 2.
Right. And I think what we also realized is that was kind of the core problem that we were tapping into. We initially thought it was bucket 3 was the issue.
Right.
But actually, there's so many more people living in bucket 2, just passive.
Yes. And why is that, Ray?
A lot of reasons. Fear of change, fear of accepting that you're not where you want to be or not where you're supposed to be, and fear of what we ended up calling, it was really your idea. You came to us with this concept, but the hard road, the easy and the hard road.
The easy road and the hard road. It's so much easier. I mean, on its face, it seems that the easy road would be the one that people would take, and that's why they call it the easy road. But it is fraught with peril. It's just so bad. I mean, the easy road ends up dead ends, forks in roads that lead to disaster, things that prevent you from getting to your true purpose.
Yeah.
Which is really sad. It's really sad.
It is. And it's not a new concept either. I was talking to someone not work related who was telling me about I think it was the Greek myth of arete. I don't know if you've heard of this.
No, I've heard of Sisyphus, but not arete.
Sisyphus is eternity in bucket 3.
Yes, up and down.
That's what no one wants. Arete is this mythical, I don't know if it was a human or another being posing as a human, who would show, I want to say it was Hercules, on one of his paths. She would say, to the right you have the path to all the power and glory, and it's a straight path, no obstacles. And then there's the other path, which is wrought with hardship and obstacles and no guarantee of achieving any of the outcomes that you want. But you will be happy. And so it was literally the easy path or the hard path.
Yes.
And the whole point is no one's happy taking the easy path.
They're not.
Even if you get the things you think you want or you think you're supposed to want, maybe you really do want them. But that outcome of getting them and not being happy is ultimately what just ruins people and the people around them, and just brings up a lot of feelings that no one wants to experience.
Right.
But once you do experience them, you realize you're in bucket 3, which we're about to talk about.
That's right. But that bucket too, it is a tough place, and it's tough because it looks so easy. It just does. Instead of having to make a tough decision to either get really engaged or do something different with your life, a lot of people will just coast. They'll just coast. They'll coast along. And the challenge with that, of course, is that we only have a limited number of minutes. And we don't know how many those are. And when they're gone, they're gone. They're not coming back. And so how terrible would that be to just kind of drift along and then find out that your life was over and you never really had a chance to really fulfill yourself or feel that absolutely incredible emotion of accomplishment, or doing something good for somebody, or having a wonderful surprise come upon you. It's just a bland wasteland, no matter, because it's all driven around, or the majority of it, let me say that, is driven by the materialistic side of things. It's very material. So a new house, a new car, a vacation, a new pair of shoes, a shopping spree, whatever it's going to be, if the reward for achieving that doesn't resonate with you, you've missed. So bucket 1, clearly a place of great energy, wonderful excitement, high engagement. Bucket 2, actually a place of boredom, lethargic. It's
if you're not making a decision, that's where it
yes,
is.
Exactly.
It's more of you're in a place where you need to make a decision, or a decision needs to be made.
Yes.
To either decide I'm in bucket 3 or I need to re-engage into bucket 1.
That's right.
But that decision's scary because that either means getting back in the hard road or getting out and picking a different hard road where you need to figure out what the heck you're going to do.
We came up with the metaphor. We were thinking about many metaphors
A lot of them.
when we were writing the book, and I think it was Corinne that came up with the idea of bucket 2 being a way station, or a fueling station, a gas station.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that, unless you have very extreme circumstances or you have some very peculiar ways of thinking, most people do not want to live their life at the gas station.
Yeah, and yet everyone's living their life at a gas station. That's what's happening.
It's terrible. It's really bad. All because they can't make the decision. And maybe they don't even know that they need to make the decision. We'll come back and talk more about that.
It's kind of like the metaphor of I'm afraid to look at the map and realize I'm hundreds of miles off course. So I'm just going to not look at the map.
I'm just going to keep going.
But just in case I am hundreds of miles off course, I'm not going to get back on the road
That's
either.
right.
I'm just going to sit here at the gas station and pretend there's nothing wrong.
Exactly. And I'll watch all the scenery around me, which isn't all that lively, but what the heck.
Yeah, I imagine it in a desert. I don't know what you imagine it. But
Yes. But that bucket 2 is a place for decision. I agree with you. It's a place of boredom, lethargy. It's a place of a little bit of anxiety.
Yeah.
But mostly when you are there, when you're in that place, it's a place to make the decision.
Yeah. So in a small dose, ideally a planned dose, so it's treated more like a pit stop.
Yes.
Right? It's like I'm going to get in, I'm going to
change the tires,
rest,
put an oil change.
refuel, look at the map.
Yes, exactly.
Then I'm going to get back on the road.
Exactly.
And I'm either going to keep going the way I was going or I'm going to turn around.
And
you have to do one or the other.
Exactly. So bucket 3 is the opposite of bucket 1.
Yeah.
So if you are in bucket 3, and there are many people out there in bucket 3, many of them, people who are in bucket 3 really don't like what they're doing anymore. And it is a soul-wrenching, gut-splitting, absolutely horrible, horrible existence. And the symptom for many people, myself included, when I've hit bucket 3 at various points in my life, is that you just don't want to get up in the morning. You just, it's like another day. It's like, oh boy, here we go again. When's the day over? You're looking at your watch constantly. You just can't wait for the day to be done. And if you're in one of those places, I mean, it's bad to be in bucket 2 at the pit stop, but it is even worse when you're in bucket 3. It is, it's really terrible. It's a terrible, terrible thing.
I think one of the misperceptions we were landing on was, it's not about getting from bucket 3 immediately back into bucket 1. You actually do have to go through bucket 2.
You do.
Because if you're just jumping back into bucket 1, you haven't made a decision. It's more of an act of desperation. So that was one of the things that we decided, and just through our own personal journeys, I think we recognized was a pattern where when you make the decision to be in bucket 1, that's so much better, because if you're just trying to get back in bucket 1, that's a fast slide right back into bucket 3.
Yeah.
And that was my experience. So kind of bringing it full circle, you recognized right away I was not in bucket 1.
Well, it's interesting, Ray, and I'll tell you a story. So you're going to tell your story, but I'm going to tell my story first.
Okay.
So one of the things that this philosophy has been really helpful in my professional and my personal life too, for that matter, is when I'm meeting new people. And let's say I've been moved around. I was often asked in my career to work with teams that lacked performance. So there was something off with them. And I had an opportunity to come in and reinvigorate and recharge. And every time I had a chance to do that, it started the same way. So there was a conversation first with the leadership team, and then with everybody else in the organization. And with the leadership team, I would explain my philosophy. And the philosophy was, I run a 3-bucket shop. People that work for me are in bucket 1. They're in bucket 1. I'll accept nothing less. Bucket 1. That's what I want. I want all in, 100%, complete engagement. And it sounds like a lot, but what I could promise them is that they would have the adventure of a lifetime. That was the trade-off. And I also shared with them at that point, because when you're going through this description of what is it like to be in bucket 1 and then the rest of them, of course everybody's going to say, well, I'm in bucket 1. But then I would say, well, and this is true, there are only two things that are really non-recoverable in my book. The first is when you are posing as somebody in bucket 1, and you're really not.
Yeah.
That's a big problem. The second problem that goes along with that is, if my goal is to create this environment where everybody is supercharged, everybody's functioning at 100%, that means that at certain points you need to be able to take a step out, because you can't fire away on all cylinders 24 hours a day forever. You have to take a step out, and that's what, in my opinion, bucket 2 is for, is to step out, reassess, make that decision. Do I want to go back in there? And if you do, step right up. But if you don't, you've got to go in a different direction.
Yes.
You have to go to bucket 3, but you cannot live in bucket 2. That is not a place to live. So you're either here or here, and here is where you make your decision. And so I think that was, I know, the second issue was this inability of people to use that bucket 2 proposition in the appropriate way.
Right.
So step out. Because what happens is, when you're operating in a 100% oxygenated environment, that's very flammable.
Oh, yes.
Very flammable. And everybody is everybody's on fire over there in a good way. They're
passionate.
moving and grooving. People are laughing. Some people are crying. But they're all in. They're all in.
Everyone cares.
With the specific goal of moving towards whatever the objective is. And so when you get to that point where it's not fun, you have to take a step out and say, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. Why?
Sometimes we just need a reminder.
Yeah, we do. And to do that point of comparison. Bucket 2 is a point of comparison. I could be here, or I could be there. Yeah. That's what that is. And sometimes that point of comparison is all you need to recharge and get back in. So I didn't like people who are posers, and I didn't like people who didn't use bucket 2 for the purpose in which it was intended. Those were two cardinal sins in my book. And anybody who's listening that has worked for me or worked in an environment where I've had some level of influence, you know what I'm talking about. So enter Ray into the little collaboration scheme. And Ray, are you in bucket 1, Ray? Are you in bucket 1? Were you in bucket 1?
Oh, I wasn't.
No, you weren't. And we picked up on that. So keep going.
Yeah. Well, I specifically remember you explaining that and talking about, Karen, I know you're in bucket 1, but Ray, I'm not sure about you. And you said that to me on Zoom. I just remember feeling so exposed.
Yes.
Like, this woman sees right through the camera on the screen, right through me. And I just remember the end of that call going like, oh, I was thinking some like, oh crap, thoughts.
Yes.
I needed to think those thoughts and be like, oh, you can't pretend.
No.
That's
Poser.
not an option.
You can't pose.
So at that point in my life, I entered into a phase of what are my options? Mm-hmm. And without sharing any of this with my team at the time. So actually some people, like if they hear this, they probably will. Hopefully this doesn't freak them out because I'm back in bucket 1. I'm still on the team. It's all worked out, obviously. But I went through a phase where I was applying for other jobs.
Yeah.
I was looking for other work. I was just accepting the fact that I wasn't engaged.
You weren't all in.
And I wasn't going to make the decision to go back to being all in.
Yeah.
But what happened is by going through that process, I forced myself into bucket 2. I accepted I was in bucket 3 and I needed to get into bucket 2. And by applying for jobs, I eventually got a job offer, and that was a literal point of decision. Mm-hmm. It wasn't necessarily that it was a right or wrong decision. It was like I finally got to a point where you can't not make a decision. Like the people offering the job need to hear from you.
That's right.
So I had to choose. Am I staying with Write It Great or am I going this other direction? Mm-hmm. And I won't go through my whole decision tree, but we talked about pros and cons lists.
Yes.
And, I don't think we need to go at length on
right
here. I think everyone knows what a pros and cons list is.
Yes, let's hope so.
Yeah, I would hope so. But I had my pros and cons list. I had my decision tree. And ultimately I decided, what I want is only possible if I stay at Write It Great and I see it through.
Yeah.
And so I respectfully declined the job offer. I sent the hiring manager a nice flower cookie basket because she put a lot of work into trying to get me on board, and I wanted to respect that. But yeah, I refused the job offer, and got back on board with Write It Great. And not just that, but like doubled down. I put some money into the company. I took on more responsibility, started teaching myself new skills, networking around the industry. It was like, I'm either going to go down burning with this ship or we're going to take off. We're going to succeed. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no more, I don't know. I'm
wishy-washy.
Wishy-washy.
Yeah.
Like, if it works out, cool. If it doesn't, meh. Yeah. Like, no, I'm going to do everything I can so that if we still fail, well, I'm learning a ton because I'm doing everything I can. And ideally, we don't fail.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right.
No one's in it to fail, I would hope. But yeah, it was all in, and that's where I'm at today. And that's if it gets to a point where I need to reset again, I now have strategies, largely, and thanks to your book, to, make sure I'm actively having those pit stops, having those bucket 2 breaks to be like, okay, where am I at? Am I starting to slip? Like consciously noticing if I'm starting to disengage before I'm just fully disengaged, and passive about it.
Yes.
Which brings us to the bucket journal, if we want to transition there.
Yep. But before we go there, I just wanted to bring up one thing. And I think that your comments about where does this all go? Is it going to be a great, colossal, wonderful thing, or is it going to, burn up and fizzle? The reality is that we don't know.
Right.
All we know is, does it call to us? And when it calls to us, it means that you really have to organize yourself in that regard. And we can talk about a couple different strategies for that in just a minute. But I remember when my son was in medical school. I don't know if I told you this story or not, but he had to take a somewhat circuitous way to finally be admitted. And he went for his master's in biological sciences before he went into medical school, as a way to prepare himself and to demonstrate his academic capabilities. The course was really, really hard.
I bet.
It was very hard. It was super duper hard. And there were a lot of tests. And I can remember talking with him about this and how he would literally work himself up into such a frenzy about the fact that he was going to fail. He knew the material. He was conversant in all the different theories and things like that they wanted him to be able to demonstrate. He had everything that he needed, but he had worked himself up into this whole scenario of what if. And it was very predictable. So he was not putting his energy right before the test at the time that he needed it most. Instead of focusing on being positive on how I've got this, he was focusing on, oh my God, my goodness, what do I do if I blow it? And it was right around this time that one of the Flying Wallendas, do you know who they are?
No.
Okay. So for the viewing audience and for your amazement,
Yes.
there is a family of high wire acts called the Wallendas, and the Flying Wallendas. And they were a part of Ringling, Barnum, and Bailey Circus for a while, and I think they've been a part of various performing acts. But their specialty was the high wire and trapeze and that type of thing. And they were always doing zany stuff. So it was one thing to do this in the 3 rings of the circus. It's another when they do it out in the public. And so one of the Wallendas, I forget which one it was, decided that he was going to cross the Grand Canyon on a high wire with no net.
With no net?
With no net.
Like a safety wire or
and
something?
I'm not sure what he had, but the advertisement on all of this was that he was doing it unsupported.
Oh my God.
And so as I thought about what this guy was going to do, which was really kind of some might call it a crazy endeavor.
I'd call it a crazy endeavor.
Okay.
Yeah.
To go from one side to the other side. Okay. It reminded me of my son on this journey. And so I was talking about this with him, and I said, I forget what the guy's first name is. Let's call him Carl.
Okay.
So, what do you think Carl is thinking when he's getting ready to walk on the tight wire? Where do you think he's looking? Do you think he's looking down? Do you think he's looking? Do you think he's looking down? Do you think he's looking this way? Do you think he's worried about the fact that he's going to fall? Do you think he's worried about any of that stuff? And my son would say, no. We had several conversations like this. I said, do you know why? And he said, no, why? I said, because I haven't talked to Carl Wallenda myself, but I suspect that he would say that, if I fail, we got plenty of time to think about that.
Yeah.
And it's true.
It's true.
If you're going to fail, you'll have plenty of time to think about that. Now, does that mean that you do silly, weirdo things? I mean, you have to, people who are taking risk in their life, would I suggest that they string a high wire across the Grand Canyon and try to take a walk across? No. But
Don't put your life in danger.
But there are things that happen in our lives that you can see where you're taking a risk, a high wire risk.
A risk is good.
And after you've thought about it, and if you're committed to it, then you have to go all in.
Yeah.
You cannot allow any doubt to seep in, because that's where the failure rate comes. And that's why when I would talk to my team, I would say, look, if you are not all in bucket 1, you have to go out. You can go out to bucket 2 and think about it and then come back. Or you may decide that this is not your cup of tea. Now I've told you you're going to work harder than you've ever worked before, but you're going to love every minute of it. And you're going to feel more alive than you've probably felt in a long time. But if you don't like that, or you've got other things that are going on in your life, well, then you might have to go do something different. Yep. It doesn't mean you're a bad person.
No.
It just means that this is not for you at this particular point in time. One of the methods that we talked about, which I really came to embrace after I left my structured role, was this concept of the bucket journal.
I love the bucket journal.
This didn't exist before. This didn't exist when I was managing these teams. This was something that happened after that. And I had decided that I was going to go all in on my high wire act, which was to organize and build my business, True North Collaboration. And on a piece of paper and in conversation, it sounded great, really fun, very exciting. And then as I got into it, I realized that I was spending a lot of time what-ifing. I was really what-ifing. And so thinking about the fact that the what-ifing and bucket 2 go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's hard not to what-if when you're taking
hard.
a lot of risks.
It's hard. It's very, very hard.
A lot of what-ifs.
But listen, I'm the queen of the buckets, man. So, I mean, how can I get out there in the world and work with companies that need to provide a higher level of engagement across their workforce? How can I possibly do that without a strategy to be able to keep myself in bucket 1?
Yeah, I think what you were realizing is it doesn't matter how proficient anyone is in the bucket leadership philosophy if you don't have a system of accountability.
That's correct. That's correct.
That's kind of what was missing from the whole.
That's right. So for our readers, I was talking with Ray about this dilemma that I had.
This was fun.
And I was doing this journal, and so the way it worked was at the beginning of the day, I would sit down, I'd reflect, I would write down a few notes about what I wanted the day to look like. So bucket 1 behaviors, absolutely. I would push myself to do that even when I wasn't in bucket 1. And then the day would go through, and at the end of the day, I would give myself a score. And what I realized very quickly is that you can be in bucket 1 for periods of the day, but it's virtually impossible to be in bucket 1 100% of the day. It's very, very hard. It's very hard to do that. Now, if I was a crazy courageous person, which I am, I guess, so maybe I should give myself this challenge after the book manuscript challenge, to try to live an entire day in bucket 1. Maybe I'll try that. Not today, but anyway, what I learned.
Very calculated.
Yes, what I learned was that I would see variations of that bucket. So if true engagement is 1.0, then anything less than that had to be a degree taking me closer to bucket 2.
Right.
And I had a particularly spectacular bad day, actually. And I was talking with you.
That's how it
felt. I was talking with you, and you said, "What's wrong?" And what was great about our collaboration team is even though we had a very light touch of the buckets when we started, we actually organized ourselves using the philosophy. And one of the big philosophies in bucket leadership is that you're highly sensitive to the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
And you see when people are struggling, and you give them an ear, and you say, come on, let's go have a talk. Let's go talk. What's going on? Tell me a little bit about it. And through that venting process, you come to the conclusion, I'm going back in or I'm going out, kind of like a coach would. So this coaching concept, which was very informal for us, but anyway, you saw me in this very desperate state, and you said, what's going on? And I said, oh, it's been a terrible week, actually. I said, I'm sliding further and further and further away, and you didn't even know about the bucket journal at this point, and you said, what are you doing? So I told you, and you said, oh, and you immediately saw the flaw in what I was doing, which was I would, instead of giving myself little notes throughout the day, what I would do is I would mentally keep track of everything, and then at the end, before I'd go to bed, the last thing I would do, write a couple comments on how I think the day went, and then give myself the score. But what was happening is that end of day score was so heavily influenced
By how you felt.
by how I felt at that particular moment. And
Yeah.
I could have had an absolutely stellar day and have, one or two minor things go wrong at the very end, and it blew my mind, and that wasn't right. So you came up with the great idea. So tell us, Ray.
Yeah, because
You were such a helper.
The day has a lot of minutes in it, and if it's all about making great decisions for all of our minutes, it's not fair to discredit the majority of the minutes because some minutes were really bad, and they were bad. So I remember we got on that call, and we asked, "How are you doing?" I just remember you said, "Bad." Might have been your exact words, but just very bad.
Bad, Ray, bad, very bad.
Like, what's going on? And you pulled out your bucket journal and you had your notes, and you're like, yesterday was, I think you wrote like a 2.75, something like that. Like it was a not favorable score.
It was not good.
I'm like, oh my word, how bad was this day? And then you started talking about this phone call that you had, however much you want to share about that phone call, but you had 2 bad phone calls.
Yes.
Totaled about 90 minutes. So I'm thinking, well, how did the rest of your day go?
Yes.
And he said, well, there was this one great session with a client. Actually, there were a couple of great sessions. You had great quality time with your husband. You worked out. You treated yourself right. Had good meals and all this stuff. And I'm like factoring all this in. By this point, I already had my own little highly analytical overthought system for the bucket journal, and I was just thinking like, all right, run that by me one more time. And I started plugging in your day into my calculator.
Yes.
It is a calculator. I still use it. I said, well, Karen, based on what you're telling me, your day by my system's calculations is about a 1.65.
Yeah.
I just remember that
it was an aha moment.
That it was an aha moment. It was also how was that day not even close to bucket 2?
Yes.
Like it was mostly in bucket 1.
That's right.
And those bad minutes
It was a gut punch.
Yeah.
It took a little wind out of the sail.
Yeah.
But on the whole, the day was actually pretty good.
Pretty good.
It was pretty good. It wasn't the greatest day, but certainly wasn't the worst.
Right. Exactly.
And I think that what we're talking about here is this accountability proposition.
Right.
Where it's easy to slide into the nothing. It's easy to slide into the void if you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
It's easy, something starts going a little bit off, a little bit more. And if you're not thinking about it, and if other people aren't calling you on it, before you know it, you wake up and you've got a real mess on your hands.
Yeah.
And this process of accounting for the minutes really did help. And I think you're doing it too, still, right?
I am. And what I love about this system is it goes both ways. It's not only I feel bad at the end of the day, was the day actually that bad? But it could also be the opposite. It could be, I feel like that was a really good day. And then you run the calculations and you see there were a lot of decisions that could have been better.
Right.
And that holds you accountable too. And you also see that the more you don't take that seriously, the more how you feel at the end of the day, like
It drifts.
gradually
It drifts.
moves to where the score says you are.
That's right.
So your feelings kind of trail a little bit your decision making. Whereas even if you feel awful at the end of the day, if you're still making good decisions, eventually your feelings follow in that direction. So it keeps me accountable to, hey, if I'm not treating myself right, even if I'm trying to make good use of my time, that's going to affect my future decisions as well.
That's right.
So trying to stay on top of it. And as soon as I start seeing like I didn't work out or I didn't eat right or something like that, which brings the score down, it's like, hey, if I don't get back on top of that, how I feel is going to start moving to where the score says I am,
Yeah.
which is more in bucket 2, which is limbo. It's I don't feel great. I need to take a serious, just take stock of like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I doing here?
Well, I mean, again, if this is the most precious thing that we have, our time,
Yeah,
the one thing that cannot be recreated,
right.
and we don't know how much we have of it.
No, we don't.
If this is really, the ultimate currency of living our life, why would we want to waste any of it, honestly?
Yeah.
And yet, looking at the statistics, because this is my business now. This is what I do every day, and I love it. I do. I love thinking about ways to fire up the world, not just the workplace. I think there's a knock-on issue that happens when you have people who are drifting along in limbo land, in bucket 3. Those people, and according to the statistics right now, less than a third of our workforce, less
Yeah.
than a third. I want you to think about that for just 1 second. Less than a third of the people actually love what they do.
Yeah,
It's
so
2/3.
If it's not the person to your left and it's not the person to your right,
That's
it's
right.
you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And
Statistically.
to think about the drag that has on everything,
Right? Yeah.
think about a leader being a leader, and those are the statistics, for your organization. Unless there's something else going on in your firm, most likely it might actually be a little bit worse than that. So those are kind. That's the averages. So if you're a leader trying to execute rapid change in the workplace, which is really necessary in order to stay relevant in today's world, how are you going to do it with only a third of the people? Because here's what happens, and I noticed this in myself and people that have worked for me over time, especially when it came time to leave my structured role. When other forces start coming in, so in my case, what was going on with me, I had a great job. Oh, it was just such a wonderful, beautiful job. I had nice people to work with, great customers, very exciting times. It was just a very cool job. But my dad was dying, and my mom had Alzheimer's. And so that was a distraction for me. And the pace of change had picked up at the firm. It was just too much. It was, as my dad liked to say to me, Karen, you're famous for trying to pile 10 pounds of potatoes into a 5-pound bag. I was into the 1-pound bag by this time. So 10 pounds of potatoes into a 1-pound bag, it just wasn't working. And I felt bad. I just felt bad. And so, but you don't even know that it's, without that accountability measure, you find yourself going further and further and further, and then you find yourself in the abyss, and you have to come out.
It usually makes itself known one way or another.
It does.
Either
It
through
does.
someone else around you finally getting fed up and coming to you and saying, stop,
Yes.
we need to talk. Or from you just going like this, no, can't go on anymore. Can't go on like this.
Yeah.
So eventually you can't keep pretending.
Yeah.
Or you can't keep avoiding it.
And for the people around you will know it before you do. The people around you, the people that are close to you, the people that care for you, the people that love you, those people are going to see it before you do, most likely.
Most likely.
And the reaction will be, in many cases, I've seen it with other people as well as with myself, when confronted with the reality, the tendency is to tell people that they're crazy, that you're wrong. Of course, I'm fine. And the more I'm fine you get, the worse it gets. So I guess to our viewing population out there, whether you are someone that is going through the buckets journey, you're in 2 headed towards 3, or maybe you're in 3 going towards 2, maybe you're in 1, who knows where you're at, but listen to what's going on around you and know that nothing is permanent. You have an opportunity to make a change. The choice belongs to you.
Every day, every minute.
That's right, right. My husband likes to say the game of baseball is played between your ears.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what he meant by that, the first time he told me that, I just thought this was another one of his hokey baseball slogans. But when I watched him coach the Little League teams that my kids played on, I got to see what that meant. Because if you're at bat and you strike out, you have to let it go.
Yeah.
And you have to
feel
get back.
good,
You have to get back into the zone.
Yep.
If you're not going to, if you want to be able to have a chance to be able to hit the ball again, or you're out in the outfield and you flub the pop-up that's coming your way, if you make a mistake, you have to learn from it. What did I do? And then apply it, and then move on. Yeah.
And it's that decision to move forward that.
It is.
This was one of my favorite things that you said during all of our collaborations was the worst waste of time is backwards agony.
Oh, yes.
It's regret,
Yes.
essentially. It's okay to acknowledge that I didn't make the best decision in the past, but the most important thing to do is to make the next best decision.
That's right.
Or if you're a fan of Frozen, do the next right thing.
That's right. That's right. You're
Just
right.
do
You're
the
right.
next
You're
right
right.
thing.
You're right.
I literally have a Post-it on my bathroom mirror that says, do the next right thing. You just need the reminder.
You do. You do. It's because it's easy in this world that we live in to forget about that. It's so easy. But yet, again, when it comes to this utilization of your minutes, it's the most important thing.
Yeah.
We don't want to end our lives thinking, oh my goodness, I devoted 70% of my time to feeling listless and bored.
Yeah.
Who wants that? Nobody wants that.
All this stuff we're saying is easier said than done. We've been through our own journeys.
We have.
And it's easy to hear this. There might be some people listening or watching right now who are on the verge of a little bit of an existential crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Just breathe.
Breathe, yes, breathe.
These human bodies are amazing, can hold a lot of intensity and a lot of intense emotions, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It'll be okay. Just the most important thing is the next decision.
That's
if
right.
you can make that one a good decision, one that you can live with,
Mm-hmm.
you're on the right track.
That's right. If someone wanted to talk to you, Ray,
Yeah.
or maybe they're interested in collaborating on a book, how would they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So best way to reach me is my email address, ray@writeitgreat.com. You can also reach anyone on our team at hello@writeitgreat.com. Our website is surprise, surprise, writeitgreat.com.
Nothing like consistency there. I love it.
Nothing like consistency. We have resources for best way to outline your nonfiction book. Andy, our company's founder, hosts webinars for aspiring authors to help you through the whole process. It's hard writing a book.
It is. It is.
Going through it. And no matter what type of book, it's one of the few arts that is very isolating.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
No.
So teams like ours exist for that reason.
That's right. And I can honestly say that you helped me get myself out of the ditch with my husband, for sure. And what a wonderful, lovely experience it was to work and collaborate with you on this book that hopefully will help many people. So we're going to sign off for now. Thank you for being
good.
here. Will you come back?
Absolutely. Thank
All
you
right.
so much for having me.
Very
This was
good.
really delightful.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
God bless.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Make Minutes Matter. If you haven't done so already, please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube or click the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And let me know what you thought of today's conversation by following us on Instagram at Karen Gilhooly 1. That's Karen, Karen, Gilhooly, Gilhooly, and the number 1. Let's make every moment in your career truly matter. Have a great day.